Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mock Talk Motivational Interviewing Case Studies for October 25th, 2019. This is Mark Valenti, your typical host for the Teasers and 20s. And today I'm very pleased to welcome my colleague, Brittany Wilson.
Hi, everybody.
So just like the Teasers and 20s, these mock talks are going to be 20 minutes or less. It's an opportunity for Brittany and I to share cases based on real life cases, but with our own little flair in there as well. And we really were inspired by our CEO, David Holmberg's message today about disruptors being welcome, specifically about embracing exceptional and innovative ideas that enhance the healthcare experience. And we feel that we want to try to bring motivational interviewing to all of you out there in a fun but also learning way. And we feel like this is one of the ways to do it. So thank you, everybody who chose to be on this call today. The other thing is you will find that our conversation that we go over is going to be sort of on high speed, meaning that we're going to be focusing on different parts of communication, and it may seem condensed versus conversations that may last hours in real life. So we really just want to highlight with our dialogue bits and pieces of things and view it through a motivational interviewing framework. As part of our dialogue, Brittany and I are going to go back and forth. We may call a timeout in the middle of it, and then have an opportunity to assess, in which case we will time back in and pick up the conversation from there. In some cases, we may choose to rewind a little bit further back and then retry an approach with more of a motivational interviewing flair to it. Everybody's microphones are muted, and also some of you I know are calling in as opposed to viewing this on your screen, in which case we will be reading what's on the screen anyway. Unlike the teasers, which are all images, we're actually going to be reading scripts, so that'll be on the screen, so you will be there with us as we do that. And we will actually be putting all of this information on paper and be sending it out to you within a few days, so if you want to go back and look at it yourself or forward it to other people as well. The good news is we are recording this session, and it will also be available to you and to anybody else who wants to listen or view in the future. We are going to be approaching each one of these cases through a motivational interviewing framework. And I want to briefly kind of talk about some of the different aspects of motivational interviewing because not everybody's familiar with it, but just kind of pull it all together.
And of course, whenever we think about motivational interviewing, the three words that really kind of encompass everything that it stands for is helping people change.
And we are focusing on the concepts that were brought about in the most recent edition, the third edition of Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Change, when the creators, Miller and Rolnick, really kind of changed the way they were talking. They got rid of some of the older language, like rolling with resistance, and brought in more of the concepts of sustained talk and change talk and the 4 steps, which we'll be talking about as well. And just as a friendly reminder, motivational interviewing is different from traditional healthcare because traditional healthcare is somebody who's dumping information or scolding somebody to try to get them to do something different. And it's really kind of that teacher imagery that I have on the screen, which is traditional healthcare, and motivational interviewing is not that.
Motivational interviewing is also not a therapy session.
Motivational interviewing is really focused on that natural state of ambivalence where an individual, in this case a patient, is struggling with staying the same or sustained talk versus changing their unhealthy behaviors. And when we put ambivalence, the sustained talk and change talk, into context, sustained talk is whenever somebody verbalizes the positives of continuing unhealthy behavior, or they talk about the struggles they may have in making the change. Change talk, conversely, is when people talk about the negatives of their current behavior and are interested in making a change and look at the positives of that change. So we're going to be talking about that. And the idea behind all of this is recognizing that change lies within each person. And if you are partnering with them and following a motivational interviewing approach, then you're really dipping down and pulling out that motivation to the surface. We're also going to be using the 4 steps I've mentioned before: engaging, focusing, evoking, and planning. And also the behavior change triangle.
Yeah, that's right. The behavior change triangle states that you have, or patients have to have, 3 areas in which they're comfortable in order to make a change. And those areas are knowledge, importance, and confidence. And sometimes we can kind of delve and see what they're struggling with and really help kind of foster that so that they're more likely to go forward with behavior changes.
The other thing that we want to focus on is trying to make this as simple as possible. So instead of multiple pages of different metrics, we really just want to look at a motivational interviewing approach. How well is the provider cultivating that change talk we talked about earlier, softening sustained talk, promoting partnership with the patient, really focus on that collaboration, and then the basics of expressing empathy. Typically, we focus on Daniel Pink's drive as looking at different levels of motivation, and we are going to talk about that today as well. And just to sort of summarize that, motivation really comes in three levels: that initial biological drive of wanting to get food, water, safety, shelter. The next level up is extrinsic, looking at relationship. And then finally, motivation 3.0, or behavior changes that occur because of intrinsic motivation, because you really want to do something, because you want to get better at it, or dedicated to a higher purpose. So let's get immediately into today's case study. Appropriately for Halloween, the case study is Trick or Treat, Lose My Feet.
Yeah, so I'm going to introduce you to our patient. So this is our patient. His name is Michael M. He's a 62-year-old male patient. He loves knives and candy in that order. He has a consistent relationship with his nurse, Jamie Lee Curtins. Jamie Lee has been working with Michael for about 6 months, and she is a care manager in his primary care office. Some of Michael's past medical history includes diabetes. He's already had multiple toe amputations. This has prompted him to go ahead and make some changes, and he's been able to get his A1C from 10.2 last year down to 8.3. He also has a history of depression, which is currently being managed. So he's able to take his insulin, he does check his sugars, and he does fairly well with these diet changes. He cheats occasionally, but struggles the most during the Halloween season. It has been an important part of his life since he was a kid. He told Jamie Lee this in their previous conversation, and she is just now calling to see how he's holding up.
Okay, great. So let's get into the case study.
Hey, Michael, how are things going?
It's going okay. Just getting ready for Halloween and the kids coming around. It's my favorite time of year.
It's really something you anticipate.
Yeah, I start planning on September 1st and make sure that I get my tombstones organized and the zombie corpses. And of course, I buy all of my chocolates by October 1st.
You want to be prepared.
Absolutely. I don't want to leave anything to chance. I also make sure I watch my favorite Halloween movie series, Friday the 13th.
What do you like most about Halloween?
Oh, there's so much to like, especially all the Reese's cups. I may end up digging into that candy around my house. It really calls to me, but it screws up my diet.
Sometimes it tempts you.
Yes, it does. It happens most years like that. If it's there, then I eat it.
May I share something with you?
Sure.
Maybe you might consider trying something else when you get that craving. Some people have an apple. Others have celery. I even have Activia when I get a craving.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Sounds good, but I don't even like yogurt.
Well, it doesn't have to be yogurt, Michael. It's not like I'm a paid spokesperson for it.
Sure, but I already feel like I'm making good choices. I just struggle with the candy around the house.
Great. I'll send you a new brochure on healthy eating and portion control. A lot of patients find it helpful.
Thanks.
Okay, is there anything else I can do for you?
No, I'm good.
Happy Halloween, Michael.
You too, Jamie Lee. Now I'm going to watch Jason Voorhees slash some teens. It always makes me so hungry. So let's do a timeout and really assess what happened here in this part of the dialogue. Let's focus on what worked well.
Yeah, so Jamie Lee says, hey, Michael, how are things going? It's a really nice open-ended question, kind of a way to get the conversation started.
Yeah, and you can see that Michael actually responds by saying it's going okay. He's talking about Halloween. It's his favorite time of year. It's really kind of understanding where Michael's coming from.
Yeah, then she was able to kind of hone in and focus. She said, what do you like most about Halloween?
And then Michael has an opportunity to talk more about the Reese cups. And of course, they have a relationship already. So Michael feels comfortable opening up, and it's been some great open-ended questions to get Michael just talking a bit. And then Jamie has an opportunity from there to figure out what's something she wants to focus on.
Yeah, and she's able to kind of identify that he's tempted by the candy around his house. And she says that to him. She reflects to him, sometimes it tempts you.
And it's great that Jamie Lee does that reflective statement because, again, Michael continues to talk. And that goes back to one of the 4 concepts we talked about earlier, expressing empathy, making an effort to grasp an individual's perspective and experience, which is actually the first step of motivational interviewing, the engaging step, which is really whenever the provider is in there in the moment, understanding what makes that patient tick.
Yeah, then the next thing she says is, may I share something with you? So she's asking permission, which is promoting partnership with Michael.
And Michael, of course, says sure. And as Brittany said, promoting partnership is there, which is conveying an understanding that expertise and wisdom about change reside mostly within the patient. So the fact that Jamie Lee is asking permission and already has that engagement there, Michael was willing to say, yes, tell me more about it. So let's talk about what didn't work so well in that conversation.
Yeah. So when Jamie Lee does say, may I share something with you? She is asking permission, but it did sound like it was a little bit premature in the conversation. And the way that he responded with that, sure, he kind of just did that out of respect, probably for their relationship versus him actually wanting to fix things. And she really didn't take the time to do any exploring. I often tell people that I'm coaching in the field, it's okay to ask permission and share information. But if it feels like it was a little too early to ask that question, then it was probably too early to start dumping information.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really goes back to, if somebody feels engaged because of the relationship and Motivation 2.0, they're going to say, yes, tell me. But as you said, maybe this was a little bit too early.
Exactly. So then she says, maybe you might consider trying something else whenever you get this craving. Some people have an apple, others have celery. I even have Activia.
Yeah, and I think Michael's response to this sort of dumping of information is okay. Like, he doesn't know what else to say. And if you notice, Jamie Lee does most of the talking here, and Michael just kind of feels sort of a passive participant. And if you look at the motivational interviewing steps, Jamie Lee's really jumped ahead to the planning stage, jumped right from engaging, skipped over the other steps, and focused on the planning.
Yeah, then she says, what do you think about that? So although this isn't wrong, and she is asking his perspective on this, again, it kind of is premature because she shouldn't have jumped to planning right away.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Michael initially responds by saying, it sounds good, but then immediately says, but I don't even like yogurt, says that he's focused on the relationship at first, but in reality, feels comfortable enough to say, this isn't working. And that really, if you go back to sustained talk and change talk, is the sustained talk. He's talking about the negatives of changing to yogurt, which again, Jamie Lee, by dumping the information, evoked that sort of sustained talk from Michael. So let's take some time and time back in. We're actually going to rewind slightly in the conversation, and then we're going to try something slightly different.
What do you like most about Halloween?
Oh, there's so much to like, especially all the Reese's cups. I may end up digging into that candy around my house. It really calls to me, but it screws up my diet.
You have a lot of temptations, but you realize that it impacts your diet.
Yes, they're right there in front of me, and it really frustrates me because I know better.
You feel that it disrupts the progress you've made.
Yes, it makes me feel like I'm disrupting all the good I've done.
You've done so much work to get here, and it's important to you to keep eating healthy.
I want to keep losing weight and help my diabetes. I don't want to lose my feet.
So let's do a timeout here.
Yeah, so again, let's talk about what worked well.
Yeah, so Jamie Lee says, what do you like most about Halloween? So again, this is open-ended, and he's got a chance to respond.
Yeah, so again, the first part of the conversation earlier, this went well as well, and it gave Michael a chance to open up. We learned that Michael has some struggles with it, but he also has a very important point in there too, which is it screws up his diet. And when we talk about sustained talk and change talk, that screwing up with the diet is actually change talk. He's talking about the negatives of his current behavior, which is cheating with that candy, and it really is something that he doesn't want to do. So that is the change talk. And the first part of our conversation, before we did our first time out, Jamie Lee sort of glossed over that, whereas in this one, she's actually holding on to that change talk. And that's something we always talk about with motivational interviewing. If that change talk is there, grab hold of that and keep that conversation going.
Yeah, so then she says, you have a lot of temptations, but you realize that it impacts your diet. This is a really nice use of a double-sided reflection. So she's kind of addressing that, wow, there's a lot of temptations in your life, but then she's going to the change talk portion where she says, but you realize that it does impact your diet.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Brittany, because I think, the fact that Michael feels heard, like, yes, there's temptations. We don't want to skip over that. But because Jamie Lee ends with the realize it impacts your diet to change talk, that's the part he continues to talk about. And he talks about how it really frustrates him because he knows better. So let's time in, because it seems like Jamie Lee is going on a very positive course here with evoking change talk. So we're going to get right back into it.
You've done so much work to get here, and it's important for you to keep eating healthy.
Yeah, I want to keep losing weight and help my diabetes. I don't want to lose my feet.
So, Michael, you've identified that this is really difficult time for you to stick to your diet.
Yes, it is. Chocolates are everywhere.
What are your thoughts on ways to reduce the temptation?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this actually. I think I can get different candy that I don't like. The trick-or-treaters can eat those stale popcorn balls and Necco wafers.
Ugh. So you feel that eliminating the chocolates will help you?
I know it will. I also know that when I sit down to watch a movie, I automatically reach for the candy bowl.
You recognize that it is a trigger.
Yeah, the moment I sit down, I get in the Halloween spirit and want those Reese's. Maybe I can keep the chocolates in the pantry when it is movie time.
So you've come up with two ideas: buying different candy or hiding your existing candy during vulnerable times. Which option do you want to try?
Well, I don't want to give the kids Necco wafers. I mean, who the hell even eats those? I think it would work better if I hid my Reese's.
Hiding your Reese's will work better for you.
Yeah. All right, so let's do final timeout and sort of look at what happened here. And again, what worked well.
Yeah, so when Jamie Lee says, what are your thoughts on ways to reduce temptation? She's going to the patient and asking him specifically, what do you want to do? What do you think we can do about this? And as we know from previous experience, whenever ideas come from the patient, they're more likely to follow through with their care plan.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing here is you're focusing on the evoking step of motivational interviewing. Instead of jumping to planning, Jamie Lee is actually stopping and asking the patient's ideas about how to move forward, which is really that well imagery of pulling up that water from within Michael and having him talk a bit about his ideas. And clearly, he has some ideas.
Yeah, so then she says, so you've come up with two ideas: buying different candy or hiding your existing. Which option do you want to try? This really does promote partnership and autonomy by giving him options. And we kind of know, because of what Michael said, with Halloween being very important to him since he was a kid, that he doesn't want to give them bad candy.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And the fact that Michael, even when he said this, realizes that it would actually disrupt his Halloween tradition by giving kids candy they don't like, actually isn't aligned with Michael's goals. So I think just, oftentimes in healthcare, patients sort of agree to things and they probably won't follow through with them because they feel that it's the other person's ideas and they're afraid to say anything. So Jamie Lee gives him options so he's able to think about it.
Yeah, and then she ends that with, hiding your Reese's will work better for you.
Yep. So this is actually the end of our mock talk today, because Brittany, what do you think is going to happen with Michael moving forward with Jamie Lee?
It sounds like she was able to evoke planning from the patient's perspective, and they've kind of established some goals. So I'm assuming that she would probably see how she could support him and offer check-ins to kind of see how he's doing with that and how he's reduced temptation.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, right? I mean, just because Michael agrees to this option, which he's the one that sort of identified, doesn't mean he's automatically going to do it. So it sounds like that ongoing partnership and relationship with Jamie Lee is going to give an option to come up with some ideas together.
Absolutely.
So we're going to actually put this stuff on paper and we're going to send it out to you, and we may actually continue the conversation a little bit, and feel free to read that. So this is Mark Valenti and Brittany Wilson signing off for the October Mock Talk. Have a wonderful rest of your day.